Welcome to Kaiser Caliber History. In today's video, we're going to be returning to the Not How You Know Them ongoing series that takes place on this channel. In this series, we examine historical figures mostly known for their roles in World War II and some other world history events, and examine their lesser-known pasts in World War I. This series aims to educate viewers on the Great War and how it shaped the people who would in turn shape our modern world. Today's subject is David Ben-Gurion, who's best known for being a leading figure in the movement for a Jewish state and the first Prime Minister of Israel. Ben-Gurion was born David Groen on October 16, 1886, to a Jewish family living in the Congress of Poland, which at that point was part of the Russian Empire. His father became an avid Zionist after reading the works of Theodor Herzl in 1896, and he co-founded a local Zionist group. Due to his father's active involvement in the Zionist movement, Ben-Gurion was exposed to these ideas at a very early age in his childhood, and took to them as well. After working on a Zionist project within Poland, Ben-Gurion left Europe for Palestine in 1906 at the age of 19. Shortly after arriving in Palestine, he adopted the name Ben-Gurion, and throughout the early 1910s, he worked out a meager existence with a series of jobs and worked on multiple Zionist projects. Our focus story of Ben-Gurion's life begins a few months after the outbreak of World War I, in late 1914, when Jamal Pasha was appointed Turkish military commander in Palestine. Pasha was a ruthless Turkish nationalist, and this caused him to ignore potential allies within the Ottoman Empire. Shortly after his appointment, while passing through Jerusalem, he came across a significant number of Zionists who were members of their local Ottomanization committee. One of the leading members of this committee was Ben-Gurion. As members of these committees, these Zionists were granted permission to recruit for a Jewish militia that would help defend Palestine against the Entente. Ben-Gurion and future second president of Israel, Yitzhak Ben-Zvi, personally recruited 40 Jews for the militia. However, Pasha, blinded by his ideology, disbanded the militia and announced that anybody found with Zionist documentation would be executed. Jamal Pasha gathered 500 Russian immigrant Jews and ordered them deported to Egypt. Ben-Gurion and Ben-Zvi, too, were deported. When they were put on the ship, they were given a note from the local governor of the port that read, quote, "To be banished forever from the Turkish Empire," unquote. After being deported, Ben-Gurion made his way to the United States, where he met and married his wife. Despite his deportation, Ben-Gurion continued to remain sympathetic to the Ottoman war effort, so long as they continued to hold Palestine. He and Ben-Zvi traveled to 35 cities throughout the United States, recruiting for Hechelets, a Jewish militia, to fight on the Ottoman side of the war. However, after the British government's publication of the Balfour Declaration in 1917, Ben-Gurion switched alliances. The declaration promised a national home for the Jewish people in Palestine, and Ben-Gurion, believing this to be a stepping stone to achieving his ultimate goal, started rallying for Zionists to support the Entente, and began to help recruit troops for a Jewish legion within the British Army to fight within the Entente forces. Ben-Gurion signed up to join the Jewish Legion himself in May of 1918. However, his military World War I service would be short and uneventful. His unit did see some action against the Ottomans during the Palestinian campaign, but Ben-Gurion himself did not take part due to a stint in the hospital with dysentery. The unit also guarded some prisoners of war in the Egyptian desert. After the armistice, Ben-Gurion was demoted from corporal to private, fined 3 days' pay, and transferred to the lowest company in the battalion because he'd gone AWOL for 5 days to visit friends in Jaffa, the city where he'd been deported from during the early years of the war. He would be demobilized in early 1919. This ends our story of David Ben-Gurion's role in the First World War. Although he wasn't heavily involved militarily like some of our past subjects in this series, he was heavily involved in the rallying of support for both belligerents of the Great War. Ben-Gurion was a great example of somebody that had a large stake in something impacted by the outcome of the war, but not necessarily an allegiance to a particular side. He was a man deeply embedded in his cause, and this is what drove him to take the actions he did during World War I. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video and learned something from it. It was nice to get back to not how you know them, and I'm looking forward to researching more future subjects. See you next time. This has been Kaiser Caliber History.